Hey guys. So today we're talking about all the different positions that people could have in the government. So who is who and what people do in the government. So we've already talked about the three branches. You've got legislative makes the laws, executive enforces the laws, judicial, Supreme Court interprets the law. And we even talked about some of the specific people that are in each of these places, like the people in Congress, who are representatives and senators, the president as the executive, and the 9 people in the Supreme Court as a judicial. Today, though, we're going to go much more into detail, much more in depth about each of those positions and each of those people, who they are and what they do. So, first off is the legislative branch. On your paper, fill in for House of Representatives, where it says members, fill in the number of representatives, depends on each state's population. Those are the people who are making the laws in the House of Representatives. The number of them depends on the population of the state. So you have a big state like Texas is going to have more power than a state like Louisiana because Texas has more people, they have more representatives, they have more votes. The leader of the House of Representatives is called the Speaker of the House, and he's the leader of the majority party. Right now, that leader is John Boehner. That's him right there. And John Boehner is a Republican. He is the Speaker of the House because the Republicans have a majority in the House of Representatives. They have more people than the Democrats. To be in the House of Representatives, you need to, these are the qualifications, you need to be at least 25 years old. You also need to be a citizen for at least 7 years. And last, you need to live in the state that you represent. The second house of the legislative branch is the Senate. In the Senate, each state gets 2 senators no matter what. You could have a state that had 3 people, 2 of them would be senators. Doesn't matter how many people in your state, everybody gets 2. The leader of the Senate is called the President of the Senate, and the President of the Senate is actually the Vice President. The only thing that the President of the Senate does is they cast a vote when there's a tie. So if it's 50-50 in the Senate, the Vice President gets the vote. That's him right there. His name is Joe Biden. To be in the Senate, you have to be at least 30 years old. You have to be a citizen for at least 9 years. And you also have to live in the state that you represent. Second branch is the executive branch. This guy runs the executive branch. I can use the term executive and president interchangeably because the president is the person who runs 100%. He can have power over every single decision in the executive branch. He enforces laws, makes treaties, controls the army, issues executive orders, all that. To be the president, you must be at least 35, be a natural born citizen, be born in the United States, and live in the United States for at least 14 years. So it's way harder to be president than anything else. You have to be born here, you have to live here for at least 14 years before you get elected president. Got to be a lot older than any of the other things. President's the most important job out of any of these, so that's why it makes it harder. Under the president is the vice president. The vice president has 2 jobs. One, he's the president of the Senate, so he gets to make that tiebreaker vote if he wants to. And second, that's the person that takes over if the president dies or resigns. This has only happened a few times in history. If you want to check how many times has the president died, you can Google that. Or if you want to see how many times has somebody resigned. One other thing, if the president gets impeached as well, the vice president still becomes president. You can check those 2 if you want. So to be the vice president, you have to have the same qualifications as to be president because there's a good chance you'll end up there. Last in the executive branch, you've got people who are called cabinet members. Cabinet members are people who work for the president, and they're in charge of a specific job in the executive branch. For example, this guy right here, Chuck Hagel, he's in charge of defense. So his job is to be second in command right under Obama for the Army. He runs the Defense Department. John Brennan is the Secretary of the CIA. He runs the CIA, but he still takes his orders from Obama. John Kerry is the Secretary of State. He does everything to do with foreign policy, but takes his orders from Obama. Third, but definitely not the least important branch, is the judicial branch. The judicial branch is made up of the Supreme Court, all 9 justices. Together, they make decisions about how to interpret laws and whether laws are constitutional or not. They do have that power of judicial review. The leader of the Supreme Court is called the Chief Justice. Anyone can be a Supreme Court justice, but remember that to be a Supreme Court justice, you have to go through legislative review. So Congress, meaning the House of Representatives and the Senate, has to think that you're good for that job. Right now, the Chief Justice is this guy right here, John G. Roberts, and he's only been there for, let's see, that was 2005, 9 years now. So this is a little bit old. All of these positions, almost all of them, exist at the state level as well. We're just going to look at 3, but you can see the gist. They're all the same. Executive at the state level is called the governor. His job is the same. He enforces laws. Legislative branch at the state level is the same. There's state representatives, there's a state senate and state senators, and their job is the same. They make laws just the same way as they do in Washington, D.C. In the judicial branch, we still have the state Supreme Court here. Same thing. They interpret state laws. So just like the states have those powers to make laws about certain things, the state Supreme Court has judicial review over those. Same thing as well. The executive can veto, legislative can override, so on and so forth. All those rules stay the same at the state level. So now what we're going to do is go through a little bit of review. Same thing as yesterday with some questions to make sure that you're staying on top of all these facts that we keep talking about. First question, both the states and the national government have a legislative branch. What is similar about the legislative branch at the state and federal level? Next, mark all of the following that are federal powers. Mark all of the following that are state powers. Now mark all the ones that are shared powers between both the federal and the state. What does federalism mean? Because of federalism, how many governments do you have? What does separation of powers mean? What does checks and balances mean? This diagram shows 2 things. It does show separation of powers, that's why it says it real big, but it also shows something else. What else does this show?